Welcome to Tales Beyond the Grave. Welcome back to another video, and we're here today. We're in Rochdale Cemetery, and it's a vast, massive cemetery. And we're here today to find the grave of the executioner, John Ellis. So let's go and find him. I'll tell you a bit about his story, and then we'll go and find his grave. So John Ellis was born here in Rochdale, 4th of October 1874, and after leaving school he took up a series of jobs, usually casual labour jobs in and around the Manchester area, and decided to take a job in a spinning mill over at Bury. And he hated the day-to-day routine of the spinning mill, long hours, 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, and he hated the thought of going to that job every morning. So he decided to follow it in his father's tradition, which was a barber and hairdresser, and he was successful at that. And he also owned a newspaper shop in Rochdale, which he worked in there with his wife and his children as well. Now at the age of 22, John decided to apply to the Home Office for the application of a job to become an executioner, and he was successful in the application, and he started training at Newgate Prison down in London. Now after his training, he first took part in an execution, his first execution in 1901 over in Newcastle, and he was assistant to the chief executioner there, who was William Billington. So after gaining the experience of execution, he became chief executioner in 1907, and he was involved in 203 executions throughout the UK, and he was involved in some of the big cases at the time. Crippen, who was known as Dr. Crippen, was the first criminal or murderer to be captured by radio telegraphy, which is very advanced in the day. So he was involved in some really big cases where he took part in the executions. Now, one execution had a profound effect on John Ellis, mentally and physically, and that was the execution of Edith Thompson. Now, Edith Thompson had been found guilty of the murder of her husband along with her lover, and she was sentenced to death, and John Ellis was to be the executioner. Now, on seeing the executioner's noose, Edith Thompson collapsed and had to be supported by 4 prison warders before they could carry out the hanging. Now, with her being collapsed, and she had to be put onto a stool, the noose was placed around her neck, and the execution took place by John Ellis, and this was known as the boatswain's chair, and it had a really bad effect on John Ellis mentally, and it stuck in his mind, and he decided the following year was to leave his post as executioner and hangman, claiming depression and dreams, and like I say, it had a really bad effect on him, this particular hanging. It's the way in which she had to be hung, and he left his post as chief senior executioner. So he leaves his post in 1924, and this spirals John into deep depression, heavy drinking. He become completely oblivious to the world. He just wanted to blot out what had happened with Edith Thompson execution, and it spiraled in, like I said, into drink, and sort of like having no meaning in life left. And he got to the stage where he decided to take his own life, and he attempted to shoot himself with a revolver, but actually shot himself through the jaw. Now, as suicide back in them days was a criminal offence, he was charged with a suicide attempt, and he was bound over by the courts for 12 months. It took its toll on him, with his wife and his children, constant bouts of depression, constant bouts of heavy drinking, and like I say, 8 years later, John finally succumbed to suicide. He took his own life, and he took his own life in a macabre way, really, and he slit his own throat with a razor. And like I say, he just couldn't come to terms with the things he'd seen as an executioner. It played on his mind, created this depression, anxiety, and forced him into drinking, really. But he never got over the execution of Edith Thompson, and it was quite an horrific way to hang a lady. And like I say, John finally took his life 8 years after the first suicide attempt. It became impossible to work with fellow executioners, including one of the most famous ones was Henry Pierpoint. Now, John Ellis reported Henry Pierpoint for turning up to an execution drunk, and he said that at the time that Henry Pierpoint would have given him a good hiding. He would have given him a punch for reporting him, but was he right to report him? We don't know. But Henry Pierpoint's brother Thomas, also an executioner, he said John Ellis had become impossible to work with. He was nasty to people, he was drinking heavily himself, and he was also suffering with depression. And like I said, it was impossible for him to work with other fellow executioners. So we're in Rochdale Cemetery, and this is where we come to find the final resting place of John Ellis, the executioner and hangman, and he's buried just over here. And if we could say, really, he's finally at rest from his depressions and what he witnessed as a hangman. And this grave here is the final resting place of John Ellis. And as it says on it, in loving memory of John Ellis of 3 Kitchen Lane, Rochdale, who died September the 20th, 1932, aged 57. And also other family members are buried alongside John. Hopefully John is now at peace with the world, and all his trauma, what he saw in his 57 years, has now passed. So rest in peace, John Ellis. So we've come to the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed that one, this trip round Rochdale Cemetery. So if you like the video, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe, a like and a share if you would. It just encourages me to go out and do videos which I think you might be interested in. So on to the next one. Where am I going on the next one? I've not got a clue. The only thing I can do is tell you. I'll see you when I get there. Bye.